I just signaled the guy.
We got audio, Chad? Oh, there we go. All right. For those who are out in the lobby area, come on in. We're going to get started here. Keep things close to time. All right. Good evening, everybody, and thanks for being here this evening, and welcome to the Kamloops North Thompson, Kamloops South Thompson All Candidates Forum. It's sponsored by CFJC-TV, CBC Kamloops, and Kamloops This Week. My name is Bill O'Donovan. I'm from CFJC-TV, and myself and Doug Herbert from CBC will be moderating tonight. So here's the format for this evening's forum. Each candidate will have an opening statement up to 90 seconds in length. Then the public will be invited to ask questions. And we ask that you make your questions concise. I can't emphasize that enough. The more concise the question, the more questions we have for the candidates. We also have 2 audience mics. And I hope that everyone will play by the rules. We're asking that anybody who has questions for the Kamloops South Thompson candidates, which are to my right, will use this mic here. Anybody with questions for my candidates to my left for Kamloops North Thompson will use the mic over here. Now, for instance, I'll just give you an example. If you have a question about Ajax, for instance, you direct it to one of the candidates at this table. Only these candidates here will be responding or rebutting whoever you direct that question to. If you have a question, the same question, there's nothing to stop you from asking the North Thompson candidates that same question. Where's your mom? So just keep that in mind. Now, each candidate, we ask again, when you ask a question, ask it to a candidate. Don't ask, will one of you respond? Ask it to a candidate, please. Candidate will have a minute to answer the question. The other candidates have an opportunity for a rebuttal or a challenge. They have challenge cards. And if they choose to comment on the question that was posed, they can do so. That's up to them. And once the rebuttals are concluded, whoever was asked the initial question has one last word. And we hope to conclude this evening by 9 o'clock. So before I turn over to Doug, I'll just introduce everybody that's here to my right. These are the Kamloops South Thompson candidates. Nancy Beppel, who is representing the BC NDP. We have Jessica Bradshaw, representing the Libertarian Party. We have Todd Stone, who's representing the BC Liberals. We have Donovan Cavers, representing the Green Party. And we have Beat Klossner, who's representing the Communist Party. Doug.
So as Bill mentioned, I'm Doug Herbert with CBC Kamloops. First off, I would like to thank everybody for coming out tonight. I know the sun is shining and it hasn't been a lot lately. So thank you for committing to coming out. I will move into our candidates on Kamloops North Thompson. We have Peter Carrick with the Communist Party of BC. We have Dan Hines with the BC Green Party. Peter Millibar with the BC Liberals. And Barb Netterpel with the BC NDP. Now, one thing I'd like to say regarding all of these candidates tonight, they've all volunteered their time to take on what is often a very tough challenge. I think we just need to give them all a round of applause because committing to public life is a huge, huge challenge.
Might mention now for opening remarks, the way the seating is done was just random, so we thought to make it simple, we'll start to our left to start the evening, and then when we conclude the evening, we'll start to the right and work our way down. So that way, simple as I can get it to. So let's start with Barb Netterpel. We're going to start with her opening comments, and we'll work our way through all the candidates.
You have 90 seconds.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for coming out tonight. This is a very exciting first time for me in such a large forum. As many of you know, I come from a healthcare background. I'm formerly a frontline nurse at Royal Inland Hospital, started in the emergency room, medical wards, surgical wards. And I've seen a lot of the discrepancies and the cutbacks and the problems that we've had in healthcare from a frontline view. And that's what initially started me on this journey into politics. And I've become a broader advocate for working people, for public services, particularly healthcare, and of course, good jobs in our community. And I think that's what sets me apart from some of the others, is that I'm not here because of something, to advance myself. I'm here because I see a real need in this province for change. And I believe that I represent that change. I've been nominated since September, and people are telling me on the doorsteps after hundreds of conversations that life is just getting harder and harder for them. That, the cost of living is going up with MSP, BC Hydro, and ICBC. And good work is hard to find. It's low wage, precarious work. And the services keep getting cut, like education and healthcare. And I believe that we could do better in BC. And I believe that John Horgan and the BC NDP will be able to provide what it is that people need. Our platform is bold.
If you could wrap it up, Barb.
It's bold, it's prudent, and it's promising. And I invite you to listen to me throughout the evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Peter Millibar.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. And I apologize in advance for my throat. I'm fighting a bit of a cold/flu, so thank you to the candidates for wanting to sit next to me. But tonight you're going to hear a lot about, and I think there's no doubt that everyone up here wants to see the best for their city and their province and their ridings. What you're going to hear, though, is fundamental differences, I think, between the parties. And you're going to hear from the BC Liberals, a party that's standing for making sure our economy stays strong, making sure we have good family-paying jobs, and making sure that we do this in a fiscally responsible way. You're going to hear a lot of different promises made and suggestions made on what can be done, with very few details around how any of those are going to be paid for. And that is really the key to all of this, is really at the end of the night and over the next 2 weeks, I would ask you all to please make sure you put on your critical thinking skills and say, does that make sense? Does that actually add up? How is that actually going to come into practice over the next several years? Because that's really the difference that we're going to see. So I've been a longtime advocate for Kamloops over the last 9 years as mayor. I can tell you that there's a very real benefit to making sure you have strong advocates for your community that are willing to go to bat for the community priorities set out, not just from Kamloops, but from Clearwater and Barrier and Sun Peaks and Blue River and everywhere up the North Thompson Valley. So I want to be that advocate, and I'd ask for your support on May 9th.
Dan Hines.
We're going to be talking a lot about policy tonight, and a lot about our platforms, a lot about the initiatives we want to bring forward. But I want to begin tonight by recognizing that we're an unceded territory of our First Peoples, that the land is all important. I come from a ranching, logging family, which my family was dedicated to the land, cared about the land, and I've kind of got that in my DNA. So I want to recognize that tonight before we begin. I also want to say on a personal level that kind of where I've come as a candidate, because it's not just about, you're not just electing people from a party or people that represent certain ideas, you're actually representing real human beings. And you have to kind of know how they tick a little bit. You have to understand where they come from, how they're going to make decisions. So I just want to tell you briefly how I landed here tonight. I work as a facilitator, a leadership consultant. I work with folks all the way across Canada, mostly in the US. And it's leaders who come for an experience because they're asking questions about where they're going, what their life is about, what's the calling, what's the fire in their belly. And I noticed that I had a passion in me, and it was about social change. And that was what kind of threw me then into thinking, well, maybe I'll give this a whirl and get involved in politics. I had no idea I'd be running as a candidate. That's what just sort of followed from that passion. So I come here tonight with a desire for change and a desire to see transformation take place in our society. We have so much of potential in BC. We just need to realize it. Thank you.
And Peter Cara.
Hi. So for the first time in my lifetime, the people of Kamloops North Thompson have the opportunity to vote for a truly progressive party. We have the most progressive platform The Communist Party of BC supports the most progressive concepts and policies and governance models that exist. And if you look to the countries that have the highest qualities of living, you look to Central and Northern Europe, they have largely social democratic governments that form coalitions, sometimes with communist or socialist parties. And when they're not actually forming coalitions, they are driven by the robust socialist and communist parties that exist in those countries. And in opposition to that, we have the capitalist countries, especially in North America, that have eliminated the robustness of the socialist and communist movement. And we've seen the result of that is ever increasing gaps between the wealthiest and the poorest. So think not just of 1 year or 4 years where you want to see the province, but of the 10 or 20 or 30 years of where you want to see our society heading towards. And support your Communist Party candidates this election. Don't be so short-sighted and supporting the status quo parties of capitalism that just tinker with little improvements here and there, and sometimes they tinker and make things worse too. Thank you.
Go ahead, Nancy.
Hello, I'm Nancy Beppel. Thank you for coming tonight. And it's great to be here on To Kamloops to Swepnik. I'm here tonight because it's time for a change. Christy Clark and the BC Liberals have been governing for the top 2%. She gave a $1 billion tax cut to the top 2% of wage earners. She took donations from lumber barons and other people to give herself a top-up on her salary. She has been looking after the rich and connected, and here in Kamloops, we've been paying the price, standing in lineups at cold temperatures at walk-in clinics because 1/3 of us have no doctor. I'm here, you're here, because we all know it's time for a change. Thank you.
Go ahead, Jessica.
Hello everyone, I'm Jessica Bradshaw. I'm going to apologize that I'm reading off a paper here. I'm not a career politician, I'm just like you guys, and I have a job and I have a family, and I don't have the time to sit here and rehearse a bunch of speeches, but what I do have the time is to come in here and try and make a change, a positive change for Kamloops. Yes, I decided at the last minute to run in this election because I felt that there was a need for a change. I believe that the Libertarian government is that change. My fellow Libertarians and me are a group of people out there that saw a huge flaw in the government and the current governing system, and we're taking steps to correct it. We're not career politicians. We are not very well versed in talking to the public and walking the walk. I speak mostly in terms of myself on that last note. We are people that saw an opportunity to help our communities at a time when they need it the most. We are well aware that there's a blatant waste of taxpayer money and government control is run rampant, and I believe it's a time to get the power back to the people and get the choices back to the people where it belongs. Lately, it's become very apparent that our current government, the system is not sustainable. The fact that our government has consistently made decisions and implemented things that clearly went against the will of the system is a call for a change. If you can please research the Libertarian Party at the libertarianbc.ca, and please look at our views, and please excuse the fact that I'm not a career politician up here and telling you everything you want to hear, but we do have a real good plan for everybody, and I think everybody needs to look into it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. Todd Stone.
Well, thank you very much. And first off, I want to thank the organizations who are sponsoring the event here tonight. And I want to thank my fellow candidates in both ridings for stepping up and putting their names on the ballot. And most importantly, thanks to all of you for coming and sharing your evening with us tonight as we discuss and have a conversation about issues that are very important to all of us in Kamloops and the region and, of course, all British Columbians. We have worked together for a number of years. I've been your MLA in Kamloops, South Thompson for 4 years, and we have some momentum. We've made some progress on a wide range of different fronts. And it's a good time to be in British Columbia. We have the strongest economy, number one economic growth in the country. We have the fastest job creation record, or the most jobs being created here than anywhere else in Canada. And with every single one of those jobs comes a paycheck. And it's at the end of the day, it's a paycheck that a family needs to look after themselves. And of course, it starts with having a vision, fighting for British Columbians, and building a strong financial foundation through balanced budgets and keeping taxes down and generally keeping government out of your way. So moving forward, if we want to continue that momentum, we need to be focused on jobs. We need to be focused on that healthy economy, because at the end of the day, it's that healthy economy which enables us to make the investments in the services that people really need, and it enables us to look after the people that we really love. So please enjoy tonight, and I certainly look forward to the engagement on issues that are very important to all of us here in Kamloops and the region. Thank you.
Thank you, Todd. Donovan?
Chris, can you give me a 10-second wave? I'd also like to acknowledge that we're on the traditional territory of the Secwepemc people. I'd also like to thank the organizers, CFJC, Kamloops This Week, and CBC Radio for organizing the forum, and to the moderators. My name is Donovan Cavers. 6 years ago, I was elected as a Kamloops City Councillor. In 2014, I had the honor of being re-elected, and I've been proud to work on behalf of the community ever since. I've been a small business owner for 10 years. As BC Green Party leader, Andrew Weaver has reiterated, this election is about trust. Dan Hines and I have knocked on nearly 7,000 doors throughout the region, and we've heard some themes. So I'd like to let you know what those themes are. People in BC and throughout the Thompson region are tired of polarized politics. We've had these two parties in our province for so long, and the leaders' debate was a good example of the bickering between them that's been holding our province hostage. People also want to see big money out of politics. The BC NDP is accepting huge donations from big unions. The BC Liberals are accepting huge donations from big corporations, and there's nobody left to represent the people. People in this riding are also extremely concerned about the Ajax mine, especially in Aberdeen, Upper Sahali, Pineview Valley neighborhoods. Our party thinks well beyond the 4-year election cycle, because we know that decisions made today will affect you, your children, and your grandchildren well into the future. We need to be making policies that consider future generations and that maintain a good standard of living for people way into the future. Thanks for your time, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Go ahead, Beat.
Okay. Thank you everybody for coming out, and I see there's no empty chairs here today, so all the candidates showed up as well for a change.
Here.
Over the decades, we have governments now that are pretty much just enablers and middlemen for corporate interests, and our point we're going to prove is it does not have to be like that. We can have governments, we can have a society that's based on common good and collective will, and not on profits and based on profits and money. That can be done, and it is high time for a change for that. So on May 9th, we'll actually give you an alternative for the first time. You have the 3 regular mainstream parties, or you can pick something else, a real choice for a chance. Thank you.
All right, thank you to all the candidates. The mics are open.
All right, introduce yourself and take your question.
My name is Rick Tudor. I wanted to ask Mr. Millibar a question if I could. It's to do with healthcare. Last week, Premier Clark would not rule out more privatized healthcare if re-elected, nor did she criticize the MLA who said that it's okay for the wealthy to jump ahead of the rest of us when it comes to healthcare. Do you support more private healthcare in BC?
So thank you for the question. Yes, I believe it was Linda Reimer that was asked a question about privatized healthcare at one of the forums. And she had indicated that she's supportive of continued expansion of privatized healthcare. The reality is right now the government of British Columbia is in court against privatized healthcare. So to suggest that Premier Christy Clark, who helped have that action initiated, is somehow on the backside also trying to promote privatized healthcare doesn't make a lot of sense. It's nowhere in the BC Liberal platform. We already do have certain streams of healthcare that are privatized, like dermatology and other things like that. But in terms of an overall expansion, given the Health Canada Act and given the fact that we're currently in court fighting against privatized healthcare with Dr. Day, I would suggest that the comment's been blown a little bit out of proportion given that we're in the middle of a provincial election cycle.
Oh, we do have a challenge card.
Go ahead, Barb.
All right. Thank you for bringing up the Brian Day case because this is the largest constitutional challenge in our history. And, this government is supposed to be fighting against private surgical clinics. And at the same time, they're actually contracting out surgeries to private surgical clinics. And is it not true to, the former Minister of Health that his one disappointment was before he left, he wasn't able to get through legislation that they could have surgical clinics have 3-night stays, which essentially would create a private hospital system.
All right. Anyone else care to challenge, or Peter, would you care to respond? Peter, your rebuttal?
Sorry, I was confused if she was rebutting to me or rebutting to Minister Lake sitting in the audience. So.
It appeared to be Minister Lake, but if you'd care to respond.
Oh, it's fine. Move on.
Start on this side.
Yes, good evening. Tony Vermel is my name. I'm going to ask a question because somebody else is going to do it, and I might as well. I'd like a comment from each and every one of you as to what you feel.
Tony didn't listen to my rules.
I thought you said we could ask both sides.
You can, yeah, but you have to slide over to there after. But your question tonight will be directed to one of these candidates right now.
Don't you guys pay any attention. From the Green Party, I can't ask each one of them to make a comment?
Just ask one, and then other people can challenge or rebuttal. Right. So direct it to somebody.
I'll ask Donovan.
Okay.
And as I say, it's a question that somebody was going to ask, and that is your stance on what you think the Ajax mine is going to do for this community, and also what you are willing to do to stop the ego trophy hunt for grizzly bears in BC.
So which one? Is it Ajax? Well, can't ask two. You're breaking all the rules as always, Tony. Okay, we'll start with Ajax.
All right.
Every year, Tony, you do this to me.
Thanks.
Donovan, we'll start with you on
30
Ajax.
30 seconds starting out. So this is a very big question. Obviously, as a city councilor, it's pretty well known where I stand on the Ajax mine. I think that it's bad news. When people like Richard Boyce, who have decades in the open pit mining industry, raise concerns, I think we should all take note. When we talk about things like the doctor shortage, the Kamloops Physicians for a Healthy Environment has documented that there's people that have bypassed our community because they don't want to set up shop here. One of the first things that we heard from the mine proponent, back when it was the junior company Abacus out of Vancouver, was that this mine is 10 kilometers away. Depends how much you wind your way along the road, but as a crow flies, it's less than 2 kilometers away, some of the facilities from Pacific Way Elementary School. I'm definitely not against mining. The BC Green Party supports mining, knows that it's an important part of the BC economy, but when it comes down to it, the cons of this project far outweigh the pros. I've been very clear, and if I'm elected as an MLA, I'll make it one of my priorities to make sure that this project is never permitted.
Okay, we have Nancy wants to comment as well.
First, in terms of the BC NDP, we know and you know that the current assessment process is broken. We don't have the confidence of the community. It doesn't adequately address First Nations rights and title. The BC NDP supports a strengthened assessment process. But I also want to point out that the leader of the Green, Weaver, was here about a year ago saying that he wanted a strong assessment process. The Greens are talking about assessment processes, but they're also saying, just let the local MLA make the decision. And it's pretty confusing to me which way they actually make their decisions.
Donovan?
Well, I think it's pretty rich coming from the NDP candidate in this riding. The NDP, I've had a lot of people that are previous NDP supporters that can't vote for the current candidate because she's compromised. She used to own shares in Abacus. When I served on council with her, she had to recuse herself from numerous council meetings over the first 2 years because she had a pecuniary conflict of interest. And I don't know, Nancy, where you stand on the mine now, if you have a position, but I believe that a lot of people in this community are very uncomfortable with your history with this mine, and they feel that you're compromised on this issue. With regards to Andrew Weaver, he made the time to come up when SLR did its town hall meeting. He is the most informed leader of any provincial leaders of the major parties on the Ajax mine issue.
Okay. Go ahead, Nancy.
In terms of being on council, and when I did have shares, which was quite a long time ago, I excused myself, which was the right thing to do. It was the thing that needed to be done based on the rules. I would be worried about somebody who maybe didn't recuse themselves, or say you look at the BC Liberals where they have scandal after scandal after scandal. They have staffers that are either charged with or convicted of criminal offenses. So in terms of well, there's the BC Rail corruption, 2 were corrupted, the triple delete, appointee pleaded guilty, there was a breach of trust of a Liberal operative. In terms of having shares, what?
No, it's okay. Are you done, Nancy? We're going to move on otherwise. Okay. All right. Go ahead.
Yes, your question.
Hi. I grew up in Vancouver, and my parents were both in the healthcare system. My dad was a pediatric heart surgeon. My mom was a public health nurse. I spent my career as a teacher in Kamloops, and my brother's a daycare worker. So I am coming from a perspective of people who worked with children in our province for decades. And I think it's very disingenuous.
Sorry, what? Can you get to your question?
Yes.
Okay.
The concern I have is that what are we doing for the children of our province with our healthcare, our education, and all the cutbacks that have happened? We're not being honest about the future that we're creating. And my question, I would love to ask everyone a question, but I have to make it to the Liberal candidates, because all of the cutbacks that have happened in those fields, how can you defend and say that we are a rich province when we have the highest poverty level? I guess I'm speaking to the candidate How
Peter?
can you say that we have a healthy education system when it was the court, the Supreme Court, that brought the Liberals to where they needed to be? My career, I saw cutback after cutback after cutback. I had to retire early. I was a music specialist and a drama specialist.
We've heard your question. Can we
There's
have
no
candidate
jobs.
respond, please?
You know, we lost jobs. We didn't gain jobs. And the children of this province have lost so much.
Okay.
Well, thank you for the question. We have put several millions of dollars into the budget now. Yes, there was the court case, but there has also been ongoing investments into education at the same time while that case was winding its way through the court system. In the meantime, we also managed to negotiate a 5 or 6 year deal with the BCTF, which the NDP were unable to do when they were in power as government as well. So to suggest that everything's always rosy with the teachers when the NDP is in power, it would be a bit of a stretch. In terms of our plan to move forward, we are looking at the capital expenditures into the districts and into areas of districts where you see growth. In Kamloops' case, we had a depopulation of the student body. We're now seeing it grow, but it's not growing where the schools that closed are. It's growing into the Pineview and the newer neighborhoods, and the school board's working with the province on trying to figure out how their capital needs can be met, as well as we're growing early child care spaces around 5,000 over the next couple of years, 13,000 by 2020, in conjunction with the federal government program around early childhood care as well.
A challenge from Dan Hines.
When we look at our society and look at the province, one of the areas where you could see where inequality is really becoming an issue has actually been in education. We do have a chronically underfunded education system, and as Greens, what we're advocating is for a new investment back into education, not just into the students, but actually into the teachers as well. That there's a new curriculum now that's been under development and coming into implementation. We want to provide some mentoring opportunities for those teachers so they can ramp up and learn the new curriculum and develop those abilities. And the investment is significant. It's $200 million initially, going up to about $1.5 billion of additional funds by the time we get to 2021. The reason for doing this is that every dollar we spend on our children, every dollar we spend in education is worth it.
And you have an opportunity to rebut if you like, Peter.
No,
okay.
Question to the right.
Hello, my name's Carrie Mae Garber. I am struggling to qualify for legal aid, also laryngitis, for family law to help stabilize life for my son who has special needs. Oh, Ms. Beppel, I'm wanting to ask this question of you. Also in the context of having left a very abusive relationship, what is your party's plan to address the crisis in the equal lack of access that there's been no new funding to legal aid in BC for over 27 years through both NDP and Liberal governments? Glenn Clark implemented a PST on legal services in 1992 with the inference that it would go to legal aid, and it has not, and this has been continued and accelerated through the Liberals. So my question is, what is the NDP's plan specifically to address equal access through restoring the devastation in legal aid, and will you apply the PST to legal services back into legal aid where it belongs? Thank you.
Great. And what's your name again?
Carrie Mae Garber.
Hi, Carrie. Yeah, I've met with 3 different law groups so far, specifically on this issue. So I know that it affects individuals, it affects women who are fleeing abuse and child custody. In terms of how it would be implemented, I don't have the details, but the NDP is committed to strengthening access to the legal system. And I understand very much from what you've said, but also the meetings with the 3 different legal groups, what the issue is. So thank you.
Donovan?
Not so much a challenge, but I just wanted the opportunity to address the question as well. Is it Karen?
Carrie.
Carrie.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, legal aid and access to the justice system nowadays is extremely important, and access to justice shouldn't be based on if you can afford the best lawyer. It should be based on the merits of the situation and who's in the right, and the factors that should be put in place to address the situation. So and as a candidate, I totally agree with your position that we need to put a lot more investment into legal aid to make sure everyone has access to proper justice.
Thank you.
All right. Your question.
Good evening. I'm Michael Mehta. I'm a professor here in the Department of Geography and Environmental Studies at TRU, and also the owner of a company called the Sweet Spot Solar Company. My question's to Dan Hines. Dan, given that Site C seems to be going ahead, a lot of people in my sector are quite concerned that this will put a significant, long-lasting chill on renewable energy. The wind energy associations moving out of the province, the geothermal associations moving out of the province. Solar is not taking off like it should. Can you tell us a little bit about your party's platform for moving us away from large-scale hydro and how that might help renewables?
Okay. Yeah, thanks for the question. On Site C, I just want to respond that we as Greens, we don't support that project. In fact, we would do everything we can to make sure that project doesn't go ahead at this point. The Site C project has been opposed on grounds of Aboriginal title, certainly on environmental effects along the Peace River, but primarily, actually, more and more, there's no economic argument for that dam. We've had flat power rates, and the question you're raising is a significant question, which is what's the effect it's going to have on renewables and the ability to ramp up smaller scale projects and see those come online, particularly in new technology like geothermal technology or biomass technology. So if we do Site C, it's going to suppress those projects. And it's going to make it impossible for those projects to move ahead as we flood the market, the domestic market in particular, with cheap Site C hydro that we really don't need right now. We may not need for decades, according to any analysis of that project.
Your question?
Hi, my name is Daleen Van Ryswick, and this is for Mr. Stone. Your party has been exposed recently for taking donations from secret donors whisked into $5,000 plate dinners in vans with blacked out windows. Cash for access and pay for play seems to be a problem with the Liberal Party. How can the voters in this room be sure that you're not giving contracts and favors to big money donors? And before you respond, I brought an example of just a few of your donors that have made out like bandits on the backs of the taxpayers of this province. Your floor, sir.
Hold it higher.
No.
Well,
Go ahead, Todd.
well, that was well rehearsed. Congratulations. Good job. Good job. I'll give you my answer. So here is the bottom line. We believe in absolute transparency. Every single the laws in British Columbia require for absolute transparency of all financial donations. We are the only party up here that is disclosing our donations in real time. We are the only party. We are the only party that is doing that, and there are very strict. Excuse me, may I answer the question, please? Are you sure? Yeah. Okay. There are very strict amounts, expense amounts that can be actually spent by candidates and campaigns during election periods. Now, what we have said, because there are proposals right across the board, we've heard a bit tonight about the NDP accepting the single largest donation in the history of British Columbia in a single year, $672,000 from the Steelworkers Union. We have received proposals from all parties about making changes to our electoral financing rules, and so what we have decided to do is on the others, once the election has come and gone, if we are re-elected, then we will appoint an independent panel that will we will seek all party support for that panel. And it will be set up exactly the same way as the Electoral Boundaries Commission. And we will say to that panel, which will report to the Deputy Attorney General, go out and look at all jurisdictions across Canada and come back with a suite of recommendations on potential changes to how money is raised and how it is disclosed. I will say this, however, we do not support the public financing of political parties. It should be up to individuals to donate to the parties of their choice.
Okay, thank you, Todd. Okay. Donovan and then Beat. Go ahead, Donovan.
Thanks. Thanks for bringing this topic up. In BC, there was a New York Times article that described the BC donation situation as the Wild West. We're an anomaly. Every other major province in Canada, the federal government has limits. In BC, there are no limits. Donations can come from anywhere on earth, and any entity can donate. Big unions, corporations, and people wonder why parties are voting a certain way. It's because they have special interest groups that they're representing. KGHM, Polish government-owned or highly government-owned company, has donated $55,000. That basically would fund one of our local Liberal candidates' entire election, local election campaigns. We need to have changes now, and the BC Green Party is the only party that's taken a proactive approach and is not accepting big union or corporate donations.
Beat?
Again, I will reiterate.
Todd, I'll let Beat ask, and then I'll come back to you, okay?
What I see here is I see three different pots calling each other black. The problem here is money in general. What we have is not really an election campaign. What we end up having is an advertising campaign, and we have to stop that. I would suggest we take all the money out of it. We have public forums where all the candidates can set up. They all have the same time. Everybody has the same opportunities, and then we actually have a campaign that's based on issues, not on lawn signs.
Todd?
Yeah. The bottom line is that campaigns actually require funding. And you can either have individuals and businesses and unions contribute those dollars to the parties of their choice, or you can ask taxpayers to dig into their pockets and without any say whatsoever have their hard-earned taxpayers' money be provided to all political parties. I don't support that. I don't support that. And so we have said we will appoint an independent tribunal which will report to the legislature. All parties would be asked to sign on to who is on that panel, and they would go out and they would pull together the best practices across the country so that as a province we could move forward with one suite of changes to our electoral financing system. That to me is very responsible.
Okay. Thank you, Todd.
Folks, think long and hard before you vote in the Liberals.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, sir.
Thanks, Bill. My name's Doug Houghton. I'm up at Knutsford. I'd like to ask the NDP candidate from the North Thompson. I would like to ask Nancy this, but I sat over here. But on May 10th, we're going to call it the new board of directors of the Financial House of the Province of British Columbia. And personally, I would like to know of your 80-plus candidates, the security that tell the people your backgrounds, whether you sign your paycheck on the front, employed people, or sign it on the back like I have too. What security can we have that you won't run this province into the mess that we've had in the past? I mean, we had it in the 90s. We've seen it next door. And to me, we're not having an election here. We're electing a new board of directors of the Financial House of the Province of BC. And if people are going to vote for you, they need to have the security that you're not going to bankrupt this province. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. We can talk about the 90s. That was 20 years ago. I think we've got enough in the last 16 years from which we can really draw from that's far more interesting as far as I'm concerned. Christy Clark in the last 4 years alone has racked up the debt $11 billion. We have, BC Hydro, ICBC, MSP have been run into the ground, and BC Hydro is up 87%. We are independent power project contracts for 40, 50 years that we're selling for, the hydro at pennies on the dollar. That's not fiscally responsible, in my opinion. But I also wonder too, when we have the corporate income tax, we're looking to increase that by 1%. Still leaves us in the very, very low average of this country. That's going to generate a whole lot of money. We want to get rid of the $1 billion tax break that the top 2% of this province got by Christy Clark. That's going to pay for a lot of education and health care. We also want to get rid of a lot of the Liberal waste.
Wrap
like
it
Eric
up, Barb.
Christie. We want to get rid of, Gordon Wilson. He's not doing very much of a job. We
Barb.
want to, and the photographer. There's a lot of liberal waste that we can certainly use for other things.
Peter?
Thank you, and this is where it comes down to, really put some critical thought to the promises you're getting fed, because when you hear $1 billion tax break, it's fundamentally totally untrue, and if they can't even get that fact straight, and it's been fact-checked by all the media, and they've agreed throughout the province as well, what else are they getting wrong when it comes to the whole rest of the hundreds of billions of dollars worth of a budget? There was a 2-year surcharge on people's income tax that was very clear. It was 2 years. The government lived up to the 2-year agreement. They then terminated it at the end of 2 years, as they always said they would. And that's what the NDP keep talking about, because they've taken that $250 million a year and multiply it by 4 as if it's been some tax break. It was a tax surcharge. It was meant for 2 years. And in fact, it only collected $500 million over the 2 years. So I don't know where the $1 billion comes from, because you haven't been able to explain that accurately, let alone where all the other billions of dollars worth of promises are coming from. And I think people need to know full disclosure as to where exactly you're going to keep taxing people to come up with all these extra revenues.
Challenge from Peter Carrick.
So I think Barb may have been mistaken because the initial tax cuts from 2001 were a $2.5 billion tax gift to the wealthiest corporations operating in BC. So if we look back at that funding, and if we take back what was taken away from working people and given to the wealthiest people who didn't need it, we would have a lot of our funding issues solved to a large part. The investment coming from the private industry is not sufficient. And even Jim Flaherty, the former finance minister under the Conservatives and friend of the BC Liberals, said corporations in Canada are sitting on an unprecedented amount of cash, billions of dollars of cash that they are failing to invest in Canada. That means they were not taxed appropriately. Tax them appropriately,
Peter.
provide the services.
And Peter, do you have a rebuttal? If you'd like to rebut that, you can.
No, it's fine.
Okay.
Question to my right.
Bill Travis. I think it's a shame that Peter and Todd and the Liberal Party never came to any previous forms. Now, in saying that, Christy Clark has led us to believe, and I'll have to ask this to Todd because it's unfair to Peter, you've been on the inner circle. There's been a problem with the education where a contract was ripped up and monies are now being paid back. I think we, as the province of BC and the people in this room, should know where that money is coming from through the information that has come to me through news media and everything else. The total bill I estimate with legal fees and the payback to the school boards, which should have been done years ago, is somewhere in the neighborhood of $1 billion.
Go ahead, Todd.
Great. Well, thank you for your question. So I have 3 little girls, 12, 10, and 7, who attend Juniper Ridge Elementary. And we are so fortunate here in Kamloops and in British Columbia to have, frankly, a world-class education system. And I make no apologies for that. What matters the most to me is the outcomes for our kids. And when you look at outcomes, for example, in grade 10, when our students in grade 10 around our province are compared in a world context, they are number one in reading in the world. They are number 4 in the world at science and number 6 at math. The grad rates in this province have gone up significantly over the last 10 years. So I think we're doing more right than wrong with the education of our kids here in British Columbia.
I think, Todd, the question was, where is the money coming to make up for what the government has to...
Right.
Todd,
Thanks for the
Todd,
help.
the question is,
I heard your
where did
question.
the
Let
billion
me
dollars,
finish.
where are you finding the $1 billion when Christy Clark states we have a balanced budget? Where's
We
it coming
do,
from?
5 consecutive balanced budgets actually in British Columbia, the only province in the country.
But
So let
where
me,
is the $1 billion coming from?
Well, respectfully, sir, I'll answer your question. I was halfway through my response. The fact is that we've increased the budget in education by $1.2 billion since 2001. That's despite 70,000 fewer students in the system. The entire cost of the settlement with the BCTF is fully costed and fully included in our fiscal plan. In fact, it's in the budget that we just presented to the legislature. That was part of a $700 million lift to the education budget, which was yet another increase in funding, which will ensure, for example, that no parents anywhere in British Columbia have to pay for transportation funding to get their kids to and from school. There are more dollars for supports in the classroom through the Learning Improvement Fund and so forth. So I, again, as a father who has kids in the system and who's well aware of the outcomes, how well our children are doing, and is well aware of the investments that we have made in our education system in this province, which is not perfect, but it's great because of the teachers that are in the system. It's great because of the investments that have been made. I'm very proud of British Columbia's K-12 system.
We'll go Nancy and then Jessica.
I just want to point out that for 15 years, kids weren't getting the amount of teaching and amount of support that was agreed to. And it's fine for Mr. Stone to say, you know, it was good enough. And it actually makes me think about the extended care homes we have around the province where 90% of them don't have the minimum staffing level. And actually here in Kamloops, 100% of them don't have the minimum staffing level. And you can say, well, you know, it's good enough. Those seniors, they're doing okay. We set a level, and it was because we feel it's important. So don't go saying, well, you know, it's okay.
Go ahead, Jessica.
I have the answer to your question since a few of the other candidates are having troubles getting through it. The money will be coming from you, and the money will be coming from them, and the money will be coming from them. And this is the way the system works, and we're well aware of it, and we need to stand together, and we need to vote in a government that is actually not going to do these things to us. Please consider the Libertarian Party.
They don't want to.
Todd, I'll go back to you again, if you have anything else you wanted to say.
Well, you know, I do hope that there are questions on healthcare to Nancy's point as well, because they didn't build a single new hospital in 10 years. They shut down 1,300 beds.
Okay.
But again, on the education system, we have invested $1.2 billion more into the system, 70,000 fewer students. And the Supreme Court, going through the courts was very important for two reasons. Yes, it did involve, there was a financial component to it, but also involved determining who should have the right to determine education policy in the classrooms. Should it be the BCTF, or should it be the government of British Columbia on behalf of taxpayers? And on that part of the decision, the taxpayers won. And so I'm very fortunate, I'm very pleased that that's the case.
Go ahead, Doug.
Your question, sir.
Yeah, my name is Martin Latinga. I have a question for the NDP candidate. It's concerning the doctors' shortage. Was actually the number one item that came up in Kamloops this week, I noticed, in terms of the item that people are concerned about. I moved my mother from Alberta recently, last year, and there was not much of a doctor shortage here. I was wondering, how is the NDP going to decide to deal with this issue? Thanks.
Thank you for your question. It's actually one of the key reasons why I decided to step forward as a candidate. You know, without a family doctor, and particularly since we lost the last walk-in clinic on the North Shore, that means that people don't have even the most basic portal into the medical system. And despite the fact that they're paying the same amount of MSP, they're not getting any of the services. as other people, and that's not right. Everybody should have access to a doctor and to other medical professionals when they need it. Our position is that we will build immediately into the urgent care clinics, which will be of team-based care, so integrated care, so you don't always need to see a doctor. Sometimes it could be a nurse practitioner, other times it could be an occupational therapist or a mental health therapist, so that it spreads the work around. So it's more efficient, and you're able to get the best out of all of the health professionals. And then going forward, we want to build within the communities these sort of integrated team-based care within existing doctors' offices. So that's a huge part of it. Oh, okay.
Time.
Thank you.
On my right.
I'm Elaine Sedgman. I have a question for Mr. Stone. In the last election, 49% of voters cast ballots which elected no one, and I was one of them. I was wondering whether you might do something about the electoral system here in BC.
Was that for Todd?
Yes.
Yes, sorry, go ahead, Todd.
So just to clarify, when you say 49%, do you mean voter turnout, or like did you vote in the last election?
People who voted. 49% of the people who voted.
Voted for a party that didn't form government?
That's right. That's right.
So this question is a really good one, and it's one that has been debated in British Columbia a number of times. And it was put to a vote, and British Columbians said no, they didn't want to change the system. So I can say that at this point in time, in terms of the platform that we have in front of British Columbians for this election, we are not making any commitments to head down that path yet again.
Beat, you had wanted to respond?
Yes. We need a change in electoral system, and we propose a mixed member proportional system. The problem here is we have a catch-22 because neither the Liberals nor the NDP are interested in that because they get to trade off absolute power every decade or so. So you see where the catch is here.
Todd?
I'd love to answer, but I only have one challenge.
Okay.
Me too.
Go ahead.
You don't have any response, Todd? No rebuttal?
No,
All right.
no more to say on that.
Actually, my question was along the exact same lines, but seeing as on this side, I'll still ask it because it gives the people on this side an opportunity. And given that the first time we tried in BC and we had a 58% in favor of the single transferable vote, which is a form of proportional representation, tonight we're seeing the adversarial effects of our current system, whereas with some sort of proportional representation would be working together. So I would prefer to have a yes, no, so we know where everybody stands, but I can't do that, so I will ask Dan Hines if he would speak about, as I think he may know the most about proportional representation on this side. I could be wrong.
The system we have now, first past the post, it really is designed to do what it's doing, which we end up with two parties. And they do trade back and forth. And that's what the system has been designed to do. That's why most progressive developed countries have gone away from first past the post. And Canada, we're one of the last places, the last holdout of this older, antiquated electoral system. There's no question that the last federal election was large. This was a large question at the last federal election. I know people who campaigned even for parties they didn't belong to, or wouldn't historically have voted for, because they were passionate about electoral reform. And as BC Greens, we're very clear on this, that if you elect some BC Greens to the legislature, we're going to work hard to see electoral reform brought back into being, and we're going to have a conversation in BC about changing the system. Thanks.
Barb?
Yeah, this isn't necessarily a challenge for Dan. I just wanted in on the action on this one. I'm passionate about electoral reform, and and I lobbied for it, and all the way to Ottawa. And it was one of the greatest disappointments out of the federal election that didn't actually come to fruition. And I think that people are really rather disenfranchised in politics as a result. So what our party's platform is on this is that we are going to hold another referendum. This province is absolutely ready for electoral change, and that was evident. But what we need to do, the reason why it's not in our platform as an individual item, is we want to hold a referendum to keep it separate from the election so that it's not going to be one of those issues. We don't want people to think that, you know, the same will happen with us that happened with Justin. We will put out the referendum, we will campaign for yes, and we will make sure that it happens. Thank you.
Question to my right.
Oh, actually, sorry, we should give Dan a
my apologies.
chance to respond.
Go ahead, Dan.
Well, I feel a bit guilty about responding when Barb didn't really rebut my comments, but it gives me another chance just to throw in something else. What you're witnessing up here with the 9 of us is actually what democracy is really about. But what happens when a majority government gets elected is that you silence 8 of us, right? And that's what happens. You cut out the ability to have coalitions, to really have thoughtful conversations, to really reflect the diversity of the community and the diversity of opinions in the community, and actually bring that into government. Instead of having it just a warfare across an aisle with one group powerless, yelling at the other group every chance they get, but having basically been ineffective. And then the rest of us just end up in a protest movement, which is a very important part of democracy, but I would say it's probably the lowest, as far as effect, it's the lowest effect we could possibly have is just a protest. So that's why I think we need to change the system.
Yeah, my name's Justin. This is for the Green Party. I work in 2 types of businesses downtown, which we involve with a lot of homeless people. And a lot of them I gather to become my friends or people I know, which a lot of people don't trust them and avoid them. A lot of people avoid the downtown because of them. But I want to know what the Green Party would be doing to try to help these people more and try to get them into organizations and things such as get them off the streets, get them off drugs, get them working somehow, even if it's cleaning a park once a week, twice a week, whatever, just to get these people doing something. Because I find, what I do, is when these people are busy, they're not doing the drugs, they're not asking us for change, they're not trying to bug us, they're just trying to be a part of society. Some of them have mental problems or something like that, where they need help, and I'm just wondering what you guys would do to help them in that way.
Thanks for the question, Justin. It's kind of a complicated question, obviously, but there's a few things I'd like to say about it. So, like I think I mentioned earlier in a previous forum that Greens believe in preventative medicine, and one of the best ways to keep people healthy is to make sure that they have a roof over their head. The government that we have right now has done a lot of policies based on the phantom sort of trickle-down effect, where if we make sure that there's wealthy people in our province, that wealth will trickle down. We know that that's not true. We have a very robust housing strategy, and the funding for that strategy comes from increasing the property transfer tax. There's a lot of people that are making huge money off of real estate, and we would make sure that they're having to pay a fee when they do that, and then those fees are primarily put into affordable housing. I was just flipping through the book, but we are committed to building 4,000 affordable housing units each year for the next 4 years in our province to make sure that people have access to appropriate housing. And that we also, on some of the other issues that you mentioned too, we believe that when people are addicted to drugs, that's not a criminal issue, that's a health issue, and that we need to address it in that manner. Thanks for the question.
Piotr?
The problem here, I think, is dignity. That's what you're talking about, right? Yes. And dignity, as I talked with a lot of groups, it all starts with housing. Housing is the ultimate thing of it. You got a decent house, you got a place to live that's safe and clean, then everything else gets to start better. And so this is essential that we have housing, and I think 4,000 units of housing is not going to cut it. We're looking at 100,000 units for publicly owned and publicly built houses. That's not that difficult. There's some 70,000 empty units sitting down in the lower mainland already. They're just in the hands of speculators. They're never filled. They're just bought and sold, and we're going to put a stop to that.
Thank you. Go ahead, Doug. Donovan, you have an opportunity, yes.
Well, I guess I would just put out there that our plan is being thoroughly looked at, and that I'm not sure how the Communist candidates would pay for the 100,000 housing units, but we do agree that there's a lot of vacancies, and we have measures in our platform to make sure that people can't sit on empty properties when there are homeless people in our communities.
Your question.
Hi, my name is Sandra Tully, and my question is for the NDP. And what is your party's plan on upping the action on the opioid crisis and harm reduction in general?
Thank you so much for that question. This is a very serious crisis that we are in, and it's frightening. The level of deaths are unprecedented. And like I mentioned even earlier today, I don't think anybody really anticipated to the extent that it was going to hit. But the problem that we have here in BC is that we simply didn't have the capacity when it did. We didn't have the addiction beds that we needed. We didn't have the services that we needed. We didn't have the mental health that we needed. We have, rampant poverty. So when it hit, we simply didn't have the ability to absorb it. So now we're dealing with a very serious crisis that we absolutely have to throw everything at. So we're going to start by bringing in mental health and addictions into one single ministry. It's a fractured system as it is right now, and it's very difficult for people to get help that they need when they need it. So it's going to be ask once, get help fast. Hearing about the 17-year-old girl that died very recently, she asked for help. She was denied. She died in a mall bathroom. That is not okay with me. We need to do absolutely everything to change this.
She was turned away because she didn't live in the right area.
Right. It's wrong.
Seeing no challenge.
Question to my right.
My question is directed to Nancy Bethel. Your party, and specifically your leaders, stated the cost of your election promises are $1.2 billion. That alone is a farce. The cost of dropping the MSP premium is $1.7 billion alone. Two Canadian leading economists have looked at your budget and said the total cost is closer to $6 billion of election promises. How is your party going to pay for this without straddling us and our kids and our grandkids into debt that we'll never get out of?
Thanks. And what's your name?
Pardon me?
And your name is?
Ernie Beadle. And I've been here for 37 years, and I'm well known in town, and I'm addressing this specifically because of what you've been saying lately.
In terms of making up the platform for the NDP, we were very conscious of, if you want to say, living within our means, and the NDP used the current numbers given by the Liberals as a starting point. And for the first 3 years, there is no deficit in the budget. So I appreciate that there are people
So you're telling me that on the backs of the Liberals have provided a cash flow, you're going to steal that cash flow instead of repaying it?
Well, I'm saying that every government makes choices in terms of what they think
How are you planning to pay it back was my question, ma'am.
What I'm saying is that the platform that the BC NDP has put forward is fully costed, and you may not agree with the spending numbers. What's happened is that the MSP, they're going to meet with the different stakeholders, like the private insurance companies who cover MSP, and come up with a plan. But the numbers for the first 3 years, we've had other economists look at it, and they agree. So I appreciate that yours don't, but there are many that do.
You still have not answered my question.
Todd?
Well, respectfully, there is a $6.4 billion crater in the NDP's plan that they've put in front of British Columbians. $1.7 billion for MSP premiums, which they initially said they would eliminate over, or initially, then they said it would be over 4 years, then they said they would simply roll it into the income tax rolls, which would be hiding it from British Columbians. We don't know where they stand on that. Daycare, a commitment of $1.5 billion per year for $10 a day daycare, which, by the way, wouldn't be available for about 10 years for kids who really need it. We're talking about eliminating tolls completely on the bridges in the Lower Mainland, $560 million cost to that. And by the way, we paid off the Coquihalla. These people, these hard-working people here paid off the Coquihalla before the tolls were removed. Why should they have to pay for the bridges in the Lower Mainland? Rental subsidy of $200 million a year. Does it make sense to provide every renter, no matter what their income is, with a $400 per year credit on an annual basis? The 114,000 affordable housing homes that you want to build that has been costed at $4.7 billion over 4 years. These are just a sample of the items that are in your platform which are not costed, and that can only mean one thing. That means higher taxes for all of these people here, and that means more debt for our children.
Well, in terms of that, I disagree. The platform has been costed out for the first 3 years with no deficit, and I appreciate that you want to spend money on some things, we want to spend it on something else. We want to spend more money on providing supplies in schools and making sure that kids are looked after. Those are all decisions that are made by a government. But we're not going into this to make life difficult. What we're trying to do actually is to make life more affordable for everyday people in BC. Under the Liberals, ICBC has gone up, BC Hydro has gone up, MSP has gone up. What we're trying to do is to make life more affordable for everyday people and not just be there for the top 2% of wage earners.
Okay, thank you, Nancy.
Excuse me, with all due respect, she's still not answered my question. Your leader said $1.2 million. It's now $6 billion.
You'll have to ask her again, but we're moving on to the next one.
That's fraudulent.
All right, my question is for Barb, and it's come up tonight, and I'm just interested to hear more about this whole United Steelworkers fiasco. Their president, Leo Gerard, gave the NDP $700,000 and then stood next to Donald Trump last week, who, by the way, called Canada a disgrace, and then he supported Trump's attack on BC forest workers. Then Horgan defended Gerard. So my question is, do you stand with John Horgan and the United Steelworkers president, who support American jobs over BC jobs? Or do you stand with our forestry sector?
I absolutely stand with the forestry sector and the workers in it. No doubt about it. So the question is, about donations, let's just kind of reflect just for a moment that not 2 weeks ago that it was Christy Clark that was meeting with Trump and saying that, you know, he was going to build it, he was going to be the guy. And that's not working out so well. But Weyerhaeuser alone has donated $240,000 to the BC Liberals. And this is a company that has shut down 10 mills in this province. That is a lot of jobs.
Sorry, my question was in regards to the United Steelworkers.
Yeah, no, I'm getting there. Yeah. Christy Clark took $240,000 from Weyerhaeuser, who closed down, you know, these mills, 10 mills in BC, and they were the ones who signed and then successfully got, you know, these duties, countervailing duties on BC softwood lumber, while Christy Clark did nothing for the last 2 years on this deal. Was it because of the donations that she didn't? But she didn't stand up for workers then, she's not standing up for workers now. The steel workers, on the other hand, they donated absolutely to the BC NDP because they want a government that will stand up for workers and will fight against the tariffs. And John Horgan will be down in Washington within the first 30 days of forming government.
They're Trump.
Okay, Peter Millibar with the challenge.
Okay, thank you. Well, again, I get very confused with the back and forth with the NDP positions on these things because literally in your answer, you just said Christy Clark met with Donald Trump 2 weeks ago, and now you're saying she's never been down to Washington. So did he fly up to Vancouver when they opened the hotel? I'm not sure. So the reality is it's about trust. Yes, Weyerhaeuser has donated to the BC Liberals, but as Todd has said, we disclose that in real time. We have no idea what the United Steelworkers has donated to the NDP this year. The NDP won't disclose that, and it comes down to that uncertainty. And when Leo Gerard is standing there 2 days before the countervailing duties come in with Donald Trump, and he's a lifetime member of the NDP, honorary lifetime member made by John Horgan, that raises a lot of questions, and you can understand why people have a lot of concern about what other deals may have been cut behind the scenes between the United Steelworkers and John Horgan, given how much money they have given over the last couple of years, and we can only guess, given that they're paying for the senior staff of the NDP campaign this year, what that might be.
Is that a challenge, Peter? Do we have a challenge, Peter Carrick?
Yeah, so beyond the steelworkers and the big corporations that buy the BC Liberal campaigns, we can see through that there's a fundamental problem in the way we finance campaigns in BC. It's been mentioned before tonight that we have a virtually unregulated system of donating to parties, and so we have the standard parties here getting tons of money and tons of influence, even situations where a company like KGHM Ajax interferes in our political process. And Mr. Stone, in a way, misled us earlier by saying that the public should not be funding our campaigns and our political parties. They shouldn't be involved in any political party support. But there are tax credits issued for all the donations given to the political parties. You are already paying for the political parties. The difference is that the wealthiest get to choose which parties get the funding, and that's wrong.
I just noticed I had a Leonard Cohen song go through my head just now, which is everybody knows the dice are loaded, right? Everybody knows the game is rigged, it's fixed. This conversation we're having right now is the problem. And whether it's coming from a big union or whether it's coming from a multinational corporation, this has to be taken out of the equation in BC politics. It's rotten. Because no union, no company would give $1 to a political party if it didn't come with favors attached. Favorable policies, maybe hidden behind a wall of possible legislation. I'm not accusing anyone of anything illegal here. What I'm saying is that it taints the whole process, and what it erodes is trust. And I think it's behind why young voters don't vote, and I've talked to them at the door. It's because they think the whole thing is rigged.
And with her final rebuttal, Barb.
Yeah, I just want to clarify what I did err on my comment. What I meant was that Christy Clark didn't meet with Donald Trump. She hasn't gone down, but she did praise Donald Trump in the last 2 weeks. But to the point on corporate and union donations, just to be clear on that, we have tabled legislation 6 times in this government, and they have refused all 6 times because Christy Clark, quite frankly, likes to have the deck stacked in her favor. And the only way that we're going to change this is if we change government.
Go ahead.
My name is Mary Baker. I'm one of more than 25,000 people in Kamloops who have no family doctor. Despite the fact that one of our previous MLAs was the Minister of Health, the situation has only got worse in the last 4 years with a Liberal government, and more people have no doctor. And we're told with great fanfare that there are 2 new clinics on the North Shore that are opening at the same time one is closing. As if that's the answer to everything. It's a great model, but I mean, it's the tip of the iceberg.
And this is an urgent problem, and I really don't feel that government's taking it seriously. And I'm asking Todd Stone, how are the next 4 years going to be any different to the last 4 years? There are people in our community who are elderly, they are frail, who cannot stand outside a drop-in clinic, and whose health is severely compromised. And I speak particularly to a neighbor who ended up in crisis and died very prematurely. Thank you.
Thank you very much for an important question, and I kind of wish we'd stuck to the initial format of this debate and had the moderators ask 3 questions of all the candidates, because frankly I think healthcare is one that you should hear from every single person on the stage. Here's where I am on the healthcare file. It first starts, and there's no question that there's a challenge in Kamloops to accessing primary care. Now there's a debate about the number and how many. Frankly, it's a big number, wherever you land on it, whether it's 15,000, 18,000, 30,000. At the end of the day, it starts attracting medical professionals to this community. Starts with world-class health facilities. We said we would build the clinical services building, and we built it. We said we're going to build the patient care tower. We're going to build that. Next, we actually train doctors here in Kamloops. There's a residency program. 6 family physicians a year do their residency at Royal Inland Hospital. The last 6 have all said that they intend on staying in Kamloops and working in different environments. We can confirm that there are 5 internationally credentialed GPs that are on their way. 2 will be finished their training very soon and will be plugged into the community. 3 others by the end of the year. There are a couple GPs that are on their way. There are 9 nurse practitioners who are now here in Kamloops providing wonderful care, primary care. 3 more on the way. So there is a wide range of different initiatives that are underway, including the primary care centers, which you pointed out to, which are providing care for frail elderly, seniors, mental health, complex medical conditions, and so forth. All of these efforts are going to ensure that the people of Kamloops and this region have much improved access to primary care.
Okay. Nancy?
Thank you for your response.
Thanks.
Sorry, thank you for your response. But with all due respect, your response sounds very, very familiar to Terry Lake's response to a similar question 4 years ago. And there was a lot of talk about all these doctors that were coming, that were in the pipeline, and little visibility of them in practice.
Thank you, Mary.
Nancy, just before, I'm just going to let Todd respond to the second part of that.
4 years ago, the challenge in healthcare was predominantly attracting specialists in the hospital. It was much less about primary care access. We had all kinds of vacancies and positions in the hospital, whether it be in cardiology, whether it be in anesthesiologists, whether it be GIs, and with a few exceptions, the specialists in Royal Inland Hospital, those roles are largely filled. We've got an expanded ER over the last 4 years. We've got a permanent MRI. We have seen significant investments in healthcare here in Kamloops. Not to mention, as I said earlier, the clinical services building. But there is no doubt, no question that primary care access is the challenge that we have got to wrestle to the ground, and I intend to over the next
We'll hold you to that because there are a lot of us. Yeah, we really will. And I mean, I agree, you have filled specialist positions, but I think if you paid attention to the fact that we were already becoming a problem with the lack of family doctors 4 years ago, if you'd looked at it then when the numbers were smaller, we wouldn't be in this problem now.
Frankly, the greater challenge of access to family doctors 4 years ago was in small rural BC. Talk to folks in Clearwater, talk to folks in Logan Lake, talk to folks in Sicamous, and there were real challenges to accessing primary care in those communities, as here. Now, the challenge has grown in Kamloops, there's no question. And I just rattled off a whole swath of initiatives which are underway, which are beginning to make a difference. The HealthLink site has 6,000 people registered on it. 700 Kamloopsians have been connected with primary care just since December. That is good progress. There is clearly more to do.
Okay, Nancy, you go ahead.
So, and I just sort of counted, and maybe I'm wrong, but I think Todd said that there's about 13 more physicians coming over the next year. He wasn't making any mention of physicians who may be retiring or leaving, which is an ongoing problem. You just have to look at all the gray hair in this room. But if you go...
You need to take that back, Nancy.
If you go online, and I did this morning, in Vernon there were 3 doctors taking patients, Salmon Arm 4, Golden 11, Revelstoke 12, Prince George 2, Fort Nelson 5. It's not simply a doctor shortage issue, it's a doctor allocation issue. We've had GPs in our community that are now working at RIH as hospitalists. The IHA and under the purview of the Ministry of Health have made different ways of making it more attractive for physicians to go one place or another, and at the end of the day, we're at the bottom of the heap. There's 19 empty positions for GPs here in Kamloops. That's what I know about, although my physician said that there's more. And that's 1 in 3 positions in all of Interior Health for GPs that are empty are here in Kamloops. So I can appreciate that things are being done for Kamloops, but at the end of the day, you can go to many, many places not very far away, and they're doing a heck of a lot better than we are. And I expect more from an MLA, and I expect that in Kamloops we should get at least as good of service as these other places around here. And we haven't had it for years.
Thank you, Nancy. Donovan?
And there's a reason, Nancy, that doctors don't want to move here, because of the Ajax mine. Any health professionals are extremely concerned, and if they move their family here, they want to live in a community that they can be guaranteed that it's going to be a healthy community well into the future. But to answer the question, I was door knocking up in Juniper Ridge last night with a local family physician. She told me there are people in this community, family physicians, that aren't practicing right now because they don't like the way the system is set up, the bill for service system. They want to practice medicine. They don't want to run a business. They don't want to do all the administrative stuff. But the way that the system has moved, as a family doctor, you have to basically set up your own private business and then bill for every single thing you do. And it's not efficient, and it doesn't serve people well. So we need a whole revamp of the system. We do need to have more people being trained. There has been some progress in that area, but people stay generally where they were trained or where they grew up. We have had investments in capital expenditures, but this government has failed in investing in the operations and putting the people in those facilities and those are the people that actually deliver the service, whether it's medical or in education. So we need more investments in operations. But the system itself, the bill for service system, is very problematic, and I know from the physician that I was door knocking with last night that she knows plenty of people that are tired of the system that we have right now.
Okay, Todd, I'll let you conclude this discussion.
Sure. And with respect to my Green opponent, there are lots of specialists and GPs that have come to Kamloops over the last 3 or 4 years. The problem is not enough, and that's why we have all these initiatives underway. And with all due respect to my NDP opponent, taking photos of people in long lines every morning is not a solution to the challenges with the primary care access. I have yet to hear a single idea, a single concrete solution from the NDP as to what they would do differently. Because what you did back in the 1990s was you actually didn't train a single new doctor in the province of, a net new doctor in the province of British Columbia. You closed down hospitals, didn't open a single one. If you needed a residential long-term care bed in Kamloops, it was a 2 to 3 year wait. So it's a bit rich to hear you criticizing a very thorough and thoughtful plan, which is taking time, but is already demonstrating some results, when all you offer is a photo on Twitter every morning.
Hi there. My turn. Mr. Millibar of the Liberals, Carrie May Garber, and legal aid again. Just from the Liberal perspective, back in the 90s, the Liberals were awesome in, as the opposition, trying to hold the NDP Clark government to using the PST on legal services when at the time they were the only professionals targeted for PST, and it was sold that it would fund legal services. They were dogs on it for 9 years. When they were elected in 2001, they cut legal aid funding by 40%, and it has continued to be eroded. The last numbers we have for 2014 was $172 million in legal services PST was collected. $75 million went to legal aid funding, and $100 million went somewhere else. It is financially, it makes sense. It reduces costs in social benefits, in mental health, and it incredibly reduces court costs so that you don't have unrepresented clients going up before judges who are then struggling to help these people through the very complex legal process. So my question again is, what is your party's plan to reverse direction on the approach to legal aid, and will you commit to applying the legal services PST, or at least a good portion of it, to supporting legal aid? Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I fully support the fact that people need to have full and proper access to proper legal help, especially those that are requiring legal aid. Often don't have the life skills with them to take care of a lot of the situations that others might be able to with very minimal legal help. So fully supportive of that. I'm admittedly a little bit weak on this side of the platform, so you'll have to bear with me. But
I can help educate you on it later.
But to me, and the fundamental, and I think when you hear all of us, especially, there's only one gentleman up here who's in government, none of us are. And so it's disingenuous, I think, for me to sit here and say, elect me, and if anyone else that's not elected currently says this, elect me and I guarantee you this will change on May 10th. That's not how the system works. Would I be willing to advocate and speak for people having the ability to access proper legal aid and make sure it's funded? Absolutely. Because I agree with you that I think that's a fundamental need for people to have that. I also think that for us to be able to properly fund and to make sure that those decisions and those prioritizations of funds can be made, you need to have a very strong economy. And that's the fundamental key to all of these social programs that we have out there, be it legal aid, be it education, be it healthcare, be it addiction services, be it anything. You need a very strong provincial economy that's growing to be able to fund things properly and to make sure that the needs and the infrastructure is in place for people that have the supports that need them when they need it. So I have no problem advocating for that, absolutely.
Challenge from Barb Legal Post.
You know what else is fundamental? The access to justice. That's an absolutely fundamental right. And it's really, 16 years that we've had of further erosion of the justice system. 24 courthouses have closed. Dramatic cuts to legal aid services, to staffing, and sheriffs were often very short of sheriffs, which means criminals walk free. Delays in cases, and of course, as you mentioned earlier, women being trapped in abusive relationships simply because they don't have access to justice. And it gives people that have financial means a leg up. It gives them the advantage over those of us that can't afford, to have representation. And that's just how this government works. They like to have, the rich and the wealthy have a leg up on those that are poor.
So what would the NDP do?
So, yeah, absolutely. So we are actually committed to improving legal aid, $10, $15, and $20 million over the next 3 years.
And Peter, a rebuttal?
Thank you. I guess fundamentally, I always find it a little discouraging that the NDP seems to jump to trying to make this an us against them and make it sound like somebody should feel guilty that maybe they've had a successful business career or are highly educated and are professional and are making a high income. So those people are contributing to our local economy, and so we need to make sure that the services that those that aren't as fortunate are well funded and are accessed by people. And I have no problem committing and advocating for that. But this us against them doesn't help anyone in the province. And I think it's always a little bit unfortunate when that's the way the conversation goes. We're hearing about doctor recruitment and retention. The us against them, if you're going to bring in punitive income taxes on people that earn $150,000 and over, how is that going to help you with doctor recruitment? All right.
Just one note, we're going to take, so we got 2 here and 2 here. Should take us right to our time in terms of questions. So just in case anybody else was thinking about getting up, you're too late. Go ahead to the right.
You'll have to excuse me, I'm a little nervous. My name is Amy Anderson, and under the current government, my twin sister lives with a permanent disability, and when she aged out of the system, all of her funding went. People, her friends, people in this community have to decide between rent or food because they are not given enough money to live on, and they cannot work, physically cannot work. So my question is for Donovan Cavers, because I would like to hear from somebody new, because it hasn't changed in a very long time. I want to know where that priority lies with your party and what types of resources are you going to put towards adults living with disabilities that cannot work? Thank you.
Thanks for the question, Amy. So a few things that stand out to me. In recent years, we had the bus pass clawback. A lot of people on disabilities. The transit system is how they get around. It's how they connect with friends, with families, with appointments. This government chose to cut the transit pass program. But fundamentally, people with disabilities are contributing members of our society. We need to make sure that they can contribute. In the tournament capital, we have the tournament capital program, which is very successfully supported by volunteers and a lot of people that have challenges, and they're able to meaningfully give back to the community. So making sure that they can do that is extremely important. In all honesty, I have to review that section of our platform. I know that we do have measures in there, but it would be disingenuous for me to put them out there, but I'd be happy to talk to you after the forum and get you more information. Thanks.
Jessica?
I think rather the problem is that the power needs to be put back in the people's hands with these decisions. It shouldn't be a matter of people trying to vote based on whether they have a relative that is disabled, or they have a relative that's on a pension, or they have a relative, it's always one demographic with these people, and we need the people to make these decisions, because I know my community would vote to keep funding for your sister, and that is what we need. We don't need these bureaucrats making our decisions for us and telling us what cuts they're going to make and where, and us being scared about it. It's time for us to get our power back.
Todd, you go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Bill. I do want to jump in on this one as well, because I happen to be very proud to be part of a government that has developed a comprehensive support system for persons with disabilities. I reject categorically any assertion whatsoever that the bus pass was clawed back. That is simply not true. There was a $170 million increase to the Persons with Disabilities budget last year, which when you look at the different levels of transportation subsidy that was provided, for those that were receiving the equivalent of a bus pass, which valued at $52 per month, they still receive that. They just get the cash for that, plus a top-up of an additional $22. So I appreciate that the top-up is not that much, and that's certainly where we have to continue to focus effort in the future. But there was never a reduction in the value of what persons with disabilities received insofar as their transportation subsidies. That is fact, $170 million increase. This last budget, we increased the budget again by $199 million for additional, for a monthly increase of $50 per month. Of course, this is on top of health supplements, pharmacare, annualized earnings exemptions, employment insurance, maternity and parental benefits, which are fully exempt. We doubled the earning exemptions, increasing asset limits for people receiving disability assistance, a 25% ICBC rate discount for persons with disabilities, a fuel tax credit.
Okay.
There is a lot that we have done to create a supportive, comprehensive system to wrap around individuals that really need the support, and I'm very, very proud of those of that system here in British Columbia.
I'll give it back to you, Donovan. The
Thanks,
question
Bill.
came to you initially.
There's a program called the 80 Cities, and I don't know exactly what the challenge that your sister has, but it's a program that I've supported as a city councillor, basically to make sure that our communities are designed so that a 8-year-old or an 80-year-old, people that maybe have mobility issues, are able to get around. That's an initiative that I think the province could support in much greater ways. But your initial question was talking about the transition when people reach a certain age. And that's something that the Green Party is looking at specifically, whether that's persons with disabilities or people that are in the foster care system that lose those family supports at a certain age. We really need to look at those transition periods when people are most vulnerable and target funding for those times in their lives.
Okay, so if I can answer. My sister lives with severe quadriplegic cerebral palsy.
Okay.
She does not have use of any of her limbs. She cannot speak. She communicates in other ways, but she is physically unable to work. And the amount of money that she receives on disability each month is barely enough, not even enough, to pay for a roof over her head and food. And we're not even talking about clothing. We're not talking about other resources that she needs. And, care.
Yeah.
And it's really terrifying for a person who lives with a disability to be told at the age of 19, you don't get anything. Here's a check that barely covers your rent. Have fun. Here's 20 extra dollars. $20 doesn't go far, especially with the way that living has increased. Try to get a place to rent for under $1,000 bucks. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, thank you for trying to answer my question. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I appreciate the question, and yeah, like I said, right now the situation where people are cut off at a certain age is totally it's totally unacceptable, and we need to have more transitions and greater supports. As you say, they're totally inadequate to meet the cost of living in our province.
Good evening, candidates, and thank you for attending this forum. My name is Debbie, and I'd like to speak to the rising cost of living and the shrinking disposable income of the working class. We've heard about BC Hydro, ICBC, MSP increases, but we also have other increases, food costs, even parking fees here at the university, current and proposed in the future. My question, and I'd like a response from each of the candidates, starting with Mr.
You have to direct it to one candidate.
Oh, okay, Mr. Millibar. What is your view, and do you think it is fair for the provincial government to dictate mandates at the bargaining table for collective agreements, such as the 5.5% over 5 years, when the government doesn't restrain increases, such as tuition included, by the same mandate? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, the government has, I believe, put in a 2% cap on tuition. And that's been in place for several years, if I'm not mistaken. But obviously, that's still more than the 5.5% of the agreement that you're talking about. And so, my understanding of it, and I wasn't in government at the time, but my understanding of it, and I was on the board of BC Transit when we were dealing with these same mandates with negotiations there, was really around the cost of government and what was felt was affordable. And so it's a bit of a balloon, and you're absolutely right in terms of cost of living. You're all taxpayers, and so if the cost of government goes up, that revenue needs to come from somewhere. So if we'd increased the wages higher, we would have needed higher revenues, which would have meant higher taxation, either in sales taxes or income taxes, probably more in income taxes, to offset that increase. And so my understanding was with Treasury Board, the feeling was we need to keep it within a funding envelope that was deemed to be affordable with the growth of the economy, and that is why the stronger the economy, the better people are able to manage, and that is why you have to really look carefully at all the promises being made as to whether they're truly funded and costed, because it does come out of somewhere.
Peter Carrick with the challenge.
So we have a fundamental problem with the capitalist system. You have institutionalized poverty, homelessness, desperation of the working class. That is not by accident. That helps the capitalist maintain profits and profitability. And there's a constant struggle. And as much as we'd like to reduce our struggle between, there is struggle between the diverse interests of working people who are trying to survive on incomes that are half of what the living wage should be. When we talk about the minimum wage being at $10 an hour, our party supports the minimum wage becoming a living wage, which is what it was intended to be, so that we could at least live up to up to what we committed to when we signed on to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, that Canadians and people around the world should be able to have a job where they can provide for themselves and live in dignity. That's a basic fundamental right that our current government and capitalist governments generally around the world do not support and have never implemented.
Peter, we have another challenger, Dan Hines.
As soon as we get talking about taxes, there's two questions, and one question gets all the attention, and the second question gets very little, but I think it deserves a lot. The first question is, how much tax do we pay? And that gets all the attention. But what really we've got to be talking about here, and I think more and more, we have to talk about who pays the tax. We used to have a very high marginal tax rate in Canada and in BC too. Gradually over time, over the last few decades, that tax rate has gone down and down for those who have really done well in the society, those who have succeeded, they've done well, but you know what? They've done it because they're part of a whole infrastructure that's provided by the commons, by all of us contributing together, by a public education system, by having health care for their workers. So what we're asking, I think, more and more to reconsider is to look at what we had in place decades ago and to say, why did we have such a high marginal tax rate back then and not now? And how do we get to a place where those who have benefited from all of the things provided by the society are going to be asked to contribute more? And if they are asked to contribute more, then some of the things we're talking about today, like education improvements, like providing more for all of us, those can be possible.
And your response, Peter.
The bottom line, though, is there's X amount of dollars to fund a certain amount of programs, and it is all about prioritization of deciding how you want to split up within all of the different ministries and services that are provided. And so Nancy referenced that earlier. It's about governments making decisions on priorities. And what I was referencing earlier about it's always unfortunate when it turns into this us against them. It also takes, in my opinion, a very, it takes it makes people that are, high income earners or doing well in the economy as well, out to be as if they don't care. They could care less about people. I go to a great many events in the city on a regular basis, and I can tell you the philanthropic spirit in this community is alive and as well. And so Dan's right. You can beat the drum of the us against them and tax the rich and bring in punitive taxes. Two things have been proven to happen. The philanthropic support of agencies disappears, so government has to pick up more, and so there's no net gain to the overall economy. And two, to the real high income earners that can actually live anywhere in the world with the same quality of life, they just leave. And they do that in every jurisdiction that you bring in overly punitive taxation.
Go ahead.
Hi, Sandra Tully again. This is for Donovan. And will your party commit to using tax dollars generated from marijuana legalization for mental health and substance use addiction?
I've got 90 seconds, but yes is the answer. Basically right now, it's anyone that's not living under a rock knows that there is a thriving marijuana industry in our province, whether you like it or not. It's not going anywhere, and what the BC Green Party believes is that we should legalize it, and we should regulate it. We should have an age restriction on it, and the revenues from it being taxed should go into mental health and addictions programs. Right now, it's a huge funder of organized crime, and I know a lot of people that are probably in the industry that would love to have a legitimate business and not have to kind of hide in the shadows. When it's regulated and dealt with safely, it can be less harmful than alcohol. The federal government is dealing with it from the criminal perspective. I think the provincial government should look at it as well, and it just needs to be done in a thoughtful way.
Seeing it's the last question on this side, I'm going to waive any challenges if any of the other candidates wanted to comment or respond to Sandra's question. If there's anybody else that wants to comment, I guess it was just you, Donovan.
Can I rebut myself?
No.
Not really.
All right,
Okay,
our
go ahead,
final
Doug.
question of the night over here.
Last but not least, I hope. Todd had a good idea a few minutes ago saying that there are some issues that are as important that everybody should have a chance to say something, because this is an election and we want to know where people stand. I'm a healthcare worker, and the doctor issue is certainly a big one. I've been around for nearly 40 years here doing that, and there's a lot of problems. But the issue that really, really concerns a lot of us is the 2,500 hectare mine that's just going to go up over the hill over here. And within a kilometer or so of the growth area of Aberdeen and an elementary school. And it really, really concerns a lot of us. There's a lot of things about this mine that are unknown. I don't care how many environmental assessments are done, there's too many unknowns. I was going to talk and ask Peter to speak to this, but he's just been the mayor and council, and they've talked a lot about it, and he probably knows things that he can't talk about right now. So I'm going to ask the question to Dan Hines to at least seriously look at the pros and cons of this mine and say what you believe would be the best thing for this community, because Kamloops is unique. There's no other city in this province in this election that has so much riding on it.
Thank you. Well, 8 years ago, when this really became a community conversation, and we began to consider this possibility of this project and became aware of it, I kept an open mind about the project. I realized, I come from a resource family, and I knew that these jobs would be important. The more I have learned in sitting through all sorts of expert consideration, sitting through the city's process with SLR, and just doing my own homework and my own consideration and reading, the Auditor General's report from last year on the mining industry itself, all those things kind of added up for me, and I thought, this is a project in which, in this case, a Polish corporation could make huge amounts of profit. There could be some economic improvement to the community, but in the end, this community takes the risk of a large open pit copper and gold mine upwind, uphill of its community, with a large tailing pond facility. It's just too high a risk. And sometimes we can sit around and talk about waiting for the environmental assessment process. We've been at this for a number of years. And the other piece I want to add here as well is that our local First Nations have gone through an incredible process, the SSN, and their process using some traditional understandings and their own environmental assessment, their own experts coming in, categorically do not give their consent to this project. So I stand with the SSN on this as well.
And as Bill offered the other candidates on that side, we will waive the challenge if anyone on this side wants to comment on that question. Yes, like I said, you take your shot.
Okay, so our party came out in opposition to Ajax as well, and I personally had an open mind because I didn't know a lot of the information. But the more people I talked to, whether it was the Kamloops physicians or Richard Boyce, who was mentioned earlier, former decades of experience up at Highland Valley Copper, both negotiating with mine owners and on behalf of workers, and being a great representative of health and safety. His concerns were so serious about the behavior that corporations exhibit to get their permit to operate, and then once they have that permit to operate, the behavior they exhibit afterwards is atrocious. And the failure is not just with the corporations, but with the lack of government interest in regulating and enforcing the regulations that are in place. Otherwise, we wouldn't see things like Mount Poly happen. That is a failure of our government.
That's time. Barb?
Mr. Moderator, is this mic on? You did grant a few minutes ago for the last speaker that side.
That's what
that
we're
both
doing here,
sides
sir.
Could talk. So
That's why Barb is up next.
Yeah. Okay, but it'd be nice if we could hear from the south side of the river too.
They are going to say something, although the first question of the night to the south side, as I mentioned to some of the candidates, was about Ajax. The only people that talked about it were Nancy and Donovan. So, but I will allow the others to say something, although they could have responded earlier.
All right, Barb.
Thank you so much for opening this up to everybody, because you're right, this is an absolutely imperative issue that we should be talking about. And I think because the problem is that we're so divided in this community because people simply don't have faith in the Christy Clark process. The environmental assessment process is flawed, deeply, deeply flawed. And it doesn't matter what side of the fence people are on this. You know, people that are in favor of the mine don't want harm to come to their community. They don't want to be on the hook for, $40 million cleanup like they were with Mount Poly. Everyone absolutely wants to be certain that this mine, if it were to happen, that it be done, that the assessment process is fair, that it's transparent, that it's rigorous, and it takes in a full account of the health impacts on our community. And that's our commitment, is to make sure that that happens, and that it's done in consultation with First Nations.
Thank you. Well, not to bring up the 90s again, I know that's a sore spot to the left of me, but Mount Poly was actually permitted by the NDP government, and they approved the soils of the tailings dam. However, when we're...
You failed to regulate it.
It was a soils collapse on an original design of the tailings ponds, folks. That's what the report said. In terms of KGHM and Ajax, though, I've been very clear over the 7.5 years that we need to let the process unfold. It's been more actually engaged than any other mine in BC has been. It's a joint federal and provincial process in terms of the two agencies working through it. SLR has come to the same conclusions at their first draft, as so has the province, as so has the federal government. So that shows you that those people reviewing are coming to the same conclusions. To the credit of the two men, ironically, you're sitting to my right tonight, Mr. Hines and Mr. Carrick, they've been very consistent in their messaging around KGHM and the Ajax process as well. However, Ms. Netterpel, in 2015, as president of the Kamloops District Labor Union, was stridently opposed, was her quote in the Kamloops this week, stridently opposed to KGHM Ajax. Just in her candidate profile, we need to let the process unwind. What's changed? $672,000 from the United Steelworkers.
All right, we'll turn it over to the South candidates. Todd, you asked me first. We'll let you go first, and then Nancy, and then who else wants to go? Donovan, Beat, Jessica.
Well, thank you, and I do appreciate the opportunity to jump in on this fundamental issue that's in front of all of us. I spoke earlier about my kids. I look at this issue through that lens as a father, and I think I speak for all the parents in this room here tonight. I would not support or champion anything that could bring harm to the human health of my children or anyone else's children, as well as the natural environment. So that is why, unless you are an engineer and a scientist specifically trained in these areas, that's why we have to let the scientists and the engineers do their job through the EAO process. The First Nations, which I have a tremendous amount of respect for the work that they did, all of their findings will be fully incorporated into the EAO's recommendations. The work that the city is doing is very important, and I applaud the city for taking a lead on that as well, and their views will be fully incorporated into the EAO's considerations. But again, at the end of the day, I support striking a balance between the economy and the environment, if you can do that. And proponents have a legal right to fair process. They have a right to a review, and they have a right to the rules not changing midstream. I do believe that at the end of the day, when this decision, when a recommendation is brought forward by the EAO to the respective ministers, it'll be federal and provincial, this will be a very difficult decision. And if it's a no, it'll be a no, and I will stand by that. If it's a yes, it will have a whole ton of conditions attached to it, and I will support that as well. And finally, there's no question that this issue has divided our community, and we will all have to step up. Regardless of it, whether it's a yes or no, we will have to step forward and help to heal this great place that we call Kamloops.
Okay. Nancy?
Thank you. On the Green side, they're saying no, which is no consultation. There's no way that the BC NDP can support that type of decision-making. On the other hand, the Liberals have weakened the environmental assessment process over the last 16 years. They've lost the faith of our community and communities across the province in terms of how they go through environmental assessments. The BC NDP is committed to strengthening the environmental assessment and making sure that there's genuine community consultation and dialogue with the First Nations in terms of their rights and title. Going forward, I see that there's going to be a change in government, and the NDP is going to be there to make the best possible decision, but to simply say no is saying no consultation, no input. To keep doing what we're doing.
Terry?
I think Peter took your spot already. So,
Peter's up here in your place.
So going forward, the Liberal approach has divided our community. We need a new approach to come to a decision.
Donovan?
Well, a few things I wanted to mention. The company, they've refused to take on a property protection plan for people that have invested their livelihoods in their homes in Aberdeen, Pineview Valley. If they were so confident that there would be no risk to those areas, they would assume the risk, but they are not doing that. It's very telling. On the jobs thing, we hear about jobs, that's kind of the thing they're hanging their hat on. I know a gentleman who works at Kamloops Immigrant Services. A few years ago, he had a rep from KGHM come in and ask if they did bulk English to Polish lessons, Polish to English lessons, which anyone can infer that they're planning to bring in workers from Poland. That's what they hope to do. And we have an NDP candidate who, she's firmly on the fence. She just reiterated that. She used to own shares in the junior company, and progressive voters in Kamloops South Thompson are very concerned about this project. There is absolutely no way that a candidate on the left side of the spectrum can be elected and bump the status quo candidate. Most of the people that have donated to my campaign are previous NDP supporters, and they can't support the current candidate because of her stand on, or lack of stand on Ajax. On May 9th, if you want a strong advocate on this issue, please consider voting green.
Piat?
I have a big problem with the whole environmental assessment process because it's fundamentally flawed. Because we have, what they show you is a project how it's going to be if it works well. I'm not interested in that. I want to see the worst possible scenario. I want to see if everything goes wrong, how you're going to deal with it and how you're going to manage that, because that is the important part.
Okay, Jessica?
I'm going to apologize because I don't have a long, bloated out answer that's going to take up your time. My answer is simple. My government is very simple. It is going to be decided by you guys, and that's the way it should be. We should be given the facts of the matter and not have things hidden. We should deal with the problem just as we see it, not with just tidbits of information to make our decisions on. And we all have to live here. We all have to deal with the pollution. We all have to deal with the lack of jobs. So either way as it goes, it needs to be decided by us, and it needs to be done by a government that's going to listen to us. And you need to ask yourself if the rest of the people here are going to be listening to your voice, or if it's just going to fall on deaf ears like it has in the past.
Okay. That brings us to our closing statements. We started to my left and to the right, so we're going to start with Beat and work our way down to my left. So, closing statements, 60 seconds, please, or less.
Oh, wow. All right. So you heard a lot about Band-Aid solutions and rearranging deck chairs here, and we offer you something else. We offer the structural change that is actually needed. Our province could be in our hands, the public's hands, or it can be in corporate hands as it is right now, and it's all about money and profits and everything like that. You can vote strategically, hold your nose while you put the ballot in the box, or for a change, you have a choice this time around. You can actually send a strong message that you're not happy, that what you're being offered here from the mainstream parties is just not good enough. Thank you.
Thanks again to the organizers, the moderators, everybody that took the time out of their evening to be here tonight. I don't know how many people took in the first leaders debate, but I think it was very telling. We had a lot of thoughtful responses from Andrew Weaver and a lot of squabbling and talking over one another from the other two leaders. And that's, I think, a good metaphor for what's been plaguing our province for the last few decades. We've had two parties that are very polarized, and there's a real possibility this time of getting a bit of a bridge in there with by electing Green MLAs, getting a bit more meaningful dialogue happening. We're the party with the most balanced platform this time, and as a local representative, I would make sure that Ajax would be top of mind, and that if elected, I'll work to make sure that that project doesn't receive a permit, because as Richard Boyce said, they'll pay fines as the cost of operating. The Mount Poly disaster, we can't trust the current government that we have to look out for the best interests of the community. This election is about trust. When it comes to big money, we're the only party not taking big union or corporate donations like the BC NDP and the BC Liberals. So if you're tired of polarized politics in our province and you want to vote for something, not against something, consider voting for the BC Green Party. We're a party that focuses on solutions, and we'd love to work on your behalf. If you've been inspired by the comments and the responses that Dan and I have been giving tonight, please grab a pen off of our table and consider voting green on May 9th for Dan Hines and Donovan Cavers and Andrew Weaver. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. And again, I really appreciate the forum and the job that the moderators have done this evening. And I again acknowledge and thank all of the other candidates for working hard out there so that voters have choices. That is very, very important in our democratic system. And thanks to all of you for the spirited debate, the engagement this evening. If you go and you walk around our community, if you go to Royal Inland Hospital and you walk through the clinical services building, you'll see what a strong economy is all about. If you walk up to the university and you look at all of the new buildings that have been built, the Industrial Training Center, the Nursing and Population Health Building, which is coming, if you look at the huge expansion in programming that we've had up there, the new programs, the additional seats, the new equipment, you'll see what a strong economy looks like. If you head out to Hoffman's Bluff and you see that, that transportation improvement, if you look at our transit service, which has been expanded in the last 4 years, new CNG buses, you'll see what a strong economy looks like. To get there, you need to balance your budget. We've done that five times in a row. You need to keep taxes down, and you need to support people with the services that they need. Folks, I don't think you get there by saying no to every project. There's only one party up here that has said yes to Site C, has said yes to Kinder Morgan, is saying yes to mining, yes to major infrastructure projects. Those are what create jobs so that you have the resources to invest in people. And folks, I'm an optimist, and I think that the future for Kamloops and the region is very, very bright. So on May 9th, I ask for your continued support to be the MLA for Kamloops South Thompson. Thank you.
Well, I'd like to say, even though I'm a smaller party and I did not have much say in tonight's debates on a lot of the issues, I wanted to throw out my Hotmail account so at least people can email me on there with any questions you may have that I have not answered. I want everybody to have a very clear stance of where my party lays on things. It is jessica_libertarian@hotmail.com. You can also go view us at libertarian.bc.ca. And I'm also on YouTube under Jessica Bradshaw, Liberty Party BC, and I try to release videos based on my views on there because I just want everybody to get a clear message, and I want people to know that they have a choice on May 9th. And it's so hard because I'm not a political type person, and it's hard for me to get up here and make these speeches, but I know it's necessary because all these guys up here tonight can tell you what they want to hear or what you want to hear, and you need to decide whether they're actually going to do it or if you need a government that's going to speak for you guys. Thank you.
Edward, Doug, Surinder, Michelle, everybody here, thank you for coming. Whoever gets elected is going to be working for everybody in this room. I'm running for the NDP because I think it has the best platform for our community. It talks about affordability. A couple of days ago, I talked to a senior who they couldn't even afford to cook in the winter because their hydro bill was so high. The platform for the NDP is about services. The doctor shortage is the #1 issue on people's minds, and we need a solution. It's abysmal right now, absolutely abysmal. 3 is jobs. We've lost 30,000 jobs in forestry, and with a 20% tariff, we've been just dealt a huge blow. We need a government that is committed to the interior of BC, and that is not the BC Liberals. We've lost 2% of our jobs under the BC Liberals. It's time for a change.
Thank you, Nancy.
So our party offers fundamental change. You know, the capitalist parties are not going to deliver a just society to you. When they talk about poverty, they talk about maybe reducing poverty. We're talking about eliminating poverty. When they talk about the homeless, they talk about maybe some affordable housing. We're talking about eliminating homelessness. There's a big difference between offering a somewhat just society and a just society. These progressive achievements are possible. They've happened in other parts of the world. If you want a just society, stop supporting the capitalist parties that just tinker around the edges and struggle to differentiate from themselves whether they're accepting big money from big unions or big money from corporations or whether or not they should accept big money. Take a broad and brave step and support a really progressive party like the Communist Party of BC. Thank you.
We've been talking a lot about some local issues tonight and a variety of different of issues around the province, but I want to end just with the balcony view that I think as a voter, there's a sort of big perspective that needs to be also taken into consideration. And I think the party that's addressing it from this kind of balcony perspective, it also needs to be a key part of your vote. We've got three big tsunami waves, three big changes coming. They haven't got a lot of talk tonight. One is the 21st century economy, its technology, its automation. We've got a game changer coming, folks, and it is going to affect employment. It's going to affect the way in which we've set up our society and our economy. It's huge. The other one is an aging population. We're not ready. It's going to affect the healthcare system. It's going to affect how we provide housing, social services, and it is also arriving. It's already washing up on our shore. The third one is climate change. That also didn't get mentioned even once tonight, but climate change is the big game changer, and it will affect everything that happens to us. So what you need to do is consider which parties are actually taking these seriously, which are including these in their platform, and I'm really proud of what we've come forward as Greens. I think we're looking from not just from the ground level, but also from the balcony. Thank you.
Well, thank you, and this is obviously a lot more lively than a municipal election forum, so that's been entertaining. You know, number one economy in the country, lowest unemployment rate in the country, and highest in job growth in the country does not come by accident. And so this is an election where there is fundamentally huge differences between the parties in terms of their outlook on that. And it's very important that we find a way to continue to move forward with projects in a way that doesn't undermine the environment, but creates those jobs, creates the economy moving forward. When you read through the BC Liberal platform, fully costed, $156 million in net new spending within that platform based on the current budget. The NDP has said that their platform is based on that budget, but it has a huge amount of additions onto it. So I don't know how they're going to do that for the same amount of money. Again, ask yourself with a critical eye when you start hearing all of these promises, is it too good to be true? Mr. Weaver said it's going to be unicorns in the backyards for everyone. Well, after seeing the Green platform, maybe he was misreading the front page of their platform, because the only thing more expensive in this campaign than the NDP's platform is the Greens' recently released platform. So please consider carefully. The economy is at stake. The direction of our province is at stake in this election in a very big way, and we want to make sure that BC continues to prosper and lead the country in all of those key indicators. So thank you for considering your support on May 9th.
Thank you, everyone, for coming out tonight. It was great to engage with you the way that we have. I started out rather nervous, but ended up being a whole lot of fun. You know, this election is about choices, you know, and priorities, however you want to put it. But here's the thing. What is evident from tonight is that under a BC Liberal, another mandate, that nothing's going to change. And quite frankly, you know, that may work for the rich and the well-connected, but for the other 90% of us, the other 98%, that's not working so well. You know, we have a platform that is absolutely costed, and it's an interesting thing that, you know, Christy Clark pulled together a hastily, report from an economist that says right in the middle of it that our platform is fiscally prudent. So I'm not sure why the constant misinformation on that. What we have is a people-focused platform, and it's about making life more affordable for people, ensuring that people have the services that they need when they need them. And it's about creating jobs in each and every single community around this province, not in camps, but in communities. And that's what we need for people, for a good, strong economy that works for everyone. And I ask that you support me on May 9th.
All right. Well, to wrap up this night, I will, as well as moderator, thank all of our candidates. I'll thank all of you. And if you're not sick of election coverage, we have 3 lovely organizations that help produce this. CBC Kamloops, Kamloops This Week, as well as CFJC News. I should know that. I used to work there. So go and support them as well. Bill, anything else?
Just one note, advanced polling, by the way, will start this weekend. So keep that in mind. There will be lots of advanced polling opportunities if you're not able to get out and cast your vote on Election Day. Thank you for being here tonight, and have a safe drive home.
Thank you.